Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for welcoming me here. Very to be sharing this and to be offering this learning space, this reflection space for all the community of TESOL Spain. So thank you everybody for joining us today. It's quite early here in Argentina. I am based in Buenos Aires and it's 8 a.m. I guess here. So quite early in the morning, but very, very happy to be sharing with the whole community today. So I will start sharing my screen just to check everything's all right and that we are on track for that. And then we can just get started, right? I'm Mónica Rodriguez Salvo. As I told you, I live in Argentina. I live in Buenos Aires. And I have specialized in social and emotional learning for education and for the workplace for the last years. And I have been implemented from my own consultancy company, different programs in different schools in the region, in Argentina, also some projects in Uruguay, in Latin America. Fortunately, I have also had the chance of attending and delivering sessions at different places in the world. And I was part, this year, I was very happy to be part of the TESOL-SPAIN online conferences that we had in May, I think it was. So very, very happy to be here today sharing some ideas with you about social and emotional learning. Today is gonna be our first session. Okay, so it's going to be like an introduction. I will be sharing some frameworks for implementation as well. I will be mentioning also some of the research that we got at a worldwide level in terms of impact. Okay, many places in the world, the social and emotional development and teaching has been measured. And so we've got quite interesting pieces of research that shows us how the development of emotions, how the development of our social skills are absolutely relevant in the world today, not only in terms of the world of education, but for life. This is what we nowadays call life skills. So it's really extremely relevant. Some of the things we know about social and emotional learning is that it is important in terms of our personal and social qualities, but it also has an impact on our levels of creativity, our levels of ability to develop teamwork, our ability to work with others, our ability to connect, our ability to bond, if you want, as communities to face, for example, what we've been facing and what we are facing in the world today in this global crisis of pandemic. So probably many of us have, I've been in these fields for many years now. So for me, it has always been very clearly present, the relevance of the development of these skills. But through pandemics, I think we've learned far more how important it is for us to learn about our emotional worlds, how important it is for us to understand about techniques that might help us cope in times of profound change as we are living in the world today. So my idea, my dear people from Spain, today is to share some basic ideas, some introductory ideas, I would say, to social and emotional development. And we will also focus today on the first level, the foundational level, where we always start in terms of developing the different skills for social and emotional learning, that is precisely self-awareness, okay? So I will be inviting you to join me in some exercises. I would like this session to be as interactive as possible. So as Rebecca was saying at the beginning, we've got a question and answer bubble at the bottom of the screen. So you can leave your questions there. And then we will use for interaction the chat bubble. that we've got both of them at the bottom of your screens. So let's get started. And the first thing I would like to mention is social and emotional learning has been mentioned as key in terms of developing what the United Nations call the Sustainable Development Goals. In this case, I have highlighted number 4, that is quality education. And there has been a lot of research going on from the United Nations in terms of the impact of different social and emotional learning programs in the world. And it's quite interesting to see some of the conclusions of this intensive research. And this is one of the phrases that I like the most from this piece of research. And it says, we need to be creative in helping young people to face the challenge of a world that is changing rapidly. That is precisely where emotional intelligence and social skills can become the best assets to navigate through those changes. And I think it is extremely relevant for the times we are living right now, and how explicit it has become, something that as teachers is part of our nature. Our nature as teachers is emotional, okay? We establish bonds with our students. We create deep relationships. It's not a commercial contract. We don't have like an interchange of assets, but we've got an interchange of emotions. So one of the most important things I would like to say first in this introductory session is that we teachers are probably already experts in the development of emotional and social skills through our practice, through facing and dealing with conflict, dealing with frustration in the classroom, dealing with sadness, or with a student that is going through a difficult moment. And we all know, and we have all been involved in these situations. Unfortunately, what happens here in Argentina is that although we've got all this practice from living our profession, let's say, from the point of view of training at the teacher training colleges, here we call them profesorados, there are no formal subjects yet that would help us develop more tools to face these situations that are natural for us in the classroom. And they are natural because our emotional nature is part of our human nature. So I hope for a world where we teachers are more equipped to deal with all this, where we can equip ourselves and our students for what we are seeing right on the screen. And precisely, the United Nations is saying that this is part of UNESCO's definition. SEL, this is social and emotional learning, can be described as learning that allows all learners to identify and navigate emotions, practice mindful engagement, and exhibit pro-social behaviors for humans to flourish towards a peaceful and sustainable planet. This is part of a very, very interesting piece of research that is precisely this one that I'm sharing with you from UNESCO, aligned to understanding the impact and the different initiatives around the globe for the sustainable development of emotional and social skills. Another thing that we know, and this is from a different piece of research, is something that we also know as teachers, and that is, when our students feel better, they learn better. Would you agree with me on that one? We know that, yes? We know that, but now we've got a very interesting piece of research that involved more than 270,000 participants that showed that a community of students that skills, emotional and social skills at a cross-cultural level and in a sustained fashion perform 11% better academically than another group of students that has not been working on developing these skills, at least sustainably, I would say. So this is another thing that we now know as a result of research. We also get better academic performance when we help our students hone and develop these skills. So this piece I'm sharing on the screen right now is from UNESCO. It was released very, very recently. It has less than a month, I think, out. So if you are interested, I have the whole piece, so then you can send me and I will be happy to share it with you. You will need some time because it's more than 500 pages long, but it's really, really very interesting. And it is the first time that I see a piece, a document of research that is contemplating social and emotional learning at a global scale. Because so far we had a lot from the United States, for example, that they have been for more than 10 years consistently measuring this, okay? But this is the first time that I found like a global approach to it, which is really very, very interesting. I have to share with you that at least in Latin America, we are starting this journey, okay? There are not many developments yet, but we are working on raising awareness about the importance of these topics. So this was just a little bit of an action in terms of research and in terms of framework of implementation and so on. But so far, you know, we've always talked about the brain and the heart. What's the relationship between the brain and the heart, right? And we always say, do they go hand in hand? Are they fighting one against the other? Who is going to win? Is it going to be the brain? Is it going to be the heart? So I would like to share with you some of the latest research, in this case, from the field of brain science, yes, and neuroscience for learning. What we know now is that there is no such a thing as a separation between our intelligence, as we call our intellectual intelligence, and our emotional intelligence. There is no such a thing as a separation between our cognition and our emotion. That is something that we used to consider as separate. What we now know is what this image is trying to transmit, that our feelings, our thoughts, our social responses engage with each other to create the learning experience. They engage with each other. They help each other. How we feel and how we think are not separate. In fact, they are part of the same process. And real learning happens when we bring both of them into the teaching and the learning process, okay? And of course, real learning happens when we bring ourselves as humans to this experience, both as teachers and as students. So how we feel makes us into what we think. How we feel affects our thinking. How we think affects our emotions, how we feel. It's like one process, and our emotions, of course, shape our thinking. And this is what we need to understand, and we know because social. We humans are social beings, right? It is absolutely crucial to understand in these times, precisely in these times of pandemics, I would say, that we cannot survive as a species all alone. We have to fight back together. We have to recover together. And I think that in Argentina, we've been in lockdown for more than 6 months. That means that I have not seen my friends or family for more than 6 months. My girls, my kids have not been in touch and have not played with their friends for more than 6 months. And we all know that this has a toll on all of us, right? So I think that it's becoming more and more important to focus on the relevance of all this, to understand our human capacity and this pro-social characteristic of teaching and learning. So we need to get together. We need to understand how our social behaviors interact with one another, so as to think on how we get together to create better societies, to create better communities, to help each other out. We are not the strongest species on Earth. Latest research says that probably we are not the most intelligent, but our pro-social behavior seems to be one of the characteristics that has made humanity what it is, that has made us survive throughout centuries. So it is really important to help our students know more about how our pro-social brain works, so as to establish better relationships, to work collaboratively, to work in teams, to create empathetic teams, and also to create, again, an impact on society. Yes? So again, coming back to this idea of the separation between cognition and emotion, I think more of cognition and emotion as what you see right now on the screen, this Jackson Pollock's beautiful piece of art. And I would say that for me, and according to the latest research, cognition and emotion work together in different layers of blue, if you want, there in our piece of art we are watching right now, with different, traces and with different lights of white and green and red, but it's all interacting together to create the magic of this piece of art. And the same happens with our cognitive and emotional process. They work together to make us who we are, and especially they work together to make us understand the world, to create the stories about how we understand the world and how we understand ourselves and our roles in this world. So I like this image of thinking of cognition, emotion as being part of different layers in our work of art, rather than separate as we used to consider them. Okay, so let me check if, okay, I would like to see some of the comments. Okay. Oh, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca has already shared that with you, the UNESCO piece of research. That's fantastic. Thank you, Rebecca, so much for that. Okay, so this is my first idea. Idea number one, I will be sharing a lot of practical ideas today and activities, because I would like you to take from this session some things that you can start trying on your own when you get back to classes that I know Erla was telling me that you're about to go back into your teaching periods again. So my first idea is integration. It stems out of this previous idea I shared about cognition and emotion working together, one with the other. So integration is one of the most important things that we need to understand, so as to help our students precisely build better stories for themselves and for the world. And for this, I will later talk about relevance. That relevance is something a very interesting concept in our brain that we can use to understand how this works. Okay. So my dear ones, here I've got my first three basic ideas of an emotionally literate classroom and how it looks like. I will be sharing today six basic ideas about an emotional literate classroom, okay? These are the first three, and start taking down notes, because we will do some checks together, we will do some revision, and we will come back to these ideas, okay? So idea number one, these are like coming back to basics in terms of emotions and social developments. First of all, very important, very, very important. All emotions are valid. That is, all emotions are okay. Probably you have heard a lot about negative emotions and positive emotions. There is no such thing because emotions are natural to the human being. They happen to all of us. So we should not classify them as positive or negative, and we will go deeper into this as we move along in our next sessions and we talk about emotional regulation, for example. But one of the most important things that we have to share with our students is that all emotions are okay. Having said that, I have to go now into, sorry, I will move this because if not, I cannot see what I'm talking about. Point number 2, idea number 2, that is, validating emotions is not validating behaviors. So all emotions are okay because they are intrinsic to who we are as humans, but that does not mean that if I am very, very angry because of something, I have the right to hurt my friend because of that. How many times have we dealt with conflict in the classroom? How many times have we been dealing with situations where someone reacts emotionally and for that reason hurts physically or emotionally or psychologically another person? So validating emotions is not validating behavior. The problem is not that you are very angry, okay? The problem is what you do with that anger. So the question is, what do you do with your emotions? This is where emotional regulation comes into place, and we will focus on emotional regulation and emotional management in our next session, next Saturday, same time, okay? So having said that all emotions are valid, I also need to point out that we are not validating all types of behavior. There are things that are acceptable and things that are non-acceptable. And we also need to be clear about that. But it is not because of the emotion. And this is something that I have heard so many times kids saying in the classroom, things such as, I am a bad boy because I get angry very easily. I am a bad girl because I quite usually feel sad. So what we need to be very clear about is that we are not our emotions. Maybe we are more what we do with those emotions, probably, okay? Because there is an active choice, okay? But we do not have a choice about feeling. Again, it is intrinsic to the human being to feel. We all feel frustrated. We all feel hurt. We all feel sad. We all go through pain, yes? And this is something that is natural for all of us. We have all felt it, I would say, in an extreme mode during pandemics, all these very difficult emotions. So we will talk about in our next session about the nature of our emotions, because if we say that they are neither positive nor negative, but then we know, of course, that we go through some emotions that are far more difficult to deal with than others, yeah? And so we will talk about this next Saturday, and we will focus on emotions being information. So all emotions have their intelligence, all emotions have information for us, okay? The problem is when these difficult emotions are on extreme mode, we cannot think clearly. And this is when behavior gets affected, probably not in a very positive way because we are in a reactive mode. And this is another thing that is natural for our brain. So we will talk about all that next Saturday, okay? Idea number 3, are you ready to take them notes? Sharing emotions is always an invitation. So whenever you work with emotions in the classroom, and second, I will move into answering the question, how do we work with emotions in the classroom? Because it all sounds good, but just tell me how on earth should I do this? When should I do it? Where do I get the time to squeeze in another thing into my programs? So I'll get to those answers in a second. Sharing, idea number 3, is sharing emotions is an invitation. What I mean by this is, whenever we talk about emotions, it has to be respecting, of course, our students' individuality, our students' privacy, and many of them might not feel comfortable sharing in public their emotions. A good strategy that technology enhanced during times of pandemics was that, for example, now, if we were talking about emotions and you don't feel comfortably sharing with all the rest of your classmates, but maybe you would like to share with me, you can send me a private chat message, for example, okay? But it's always an invitation when we ask our students to share how they feel, right? Would you like to share? Is there anyone that would like to share an idea? Feel free if you want to, always from this invitation tone, so as to respect absolutely their individuality. Some other students might feel more comfortable sharing their sharing emotions, but not through words, maybe through writing, maybe through drawing, maybe through body language. We transmit a lot about our emotional world with our bodies, with our gestures, and so on. So these are the 3 basic ideas that I want to share at this moment. And before we move on, I would like to focus on this question of how can we deploy this in our classrooms. And for this, there are different answers, and I would like to share some of the simplest with you. One way, of course, is through creating a curricula of activities as interventions to develop social and emotional learning. For example, some of the activities that I will share with you today that you can do with your students are part of this nature, are part of creating a curricula of activities that are enhancing and creating a welcoming, safe environment to talk about emotions, to share information about emotions, to talk about the importance of emotional regulation, and so on. This is one level. Another level that would be easier, if you want, at the beginning, is to use everything that happens in your classroom, in your English classes. So, for example, if you're working with a textbook where you've got pieces of readings, where you've got songs, where you've got videos, where you've got different situations, to make a twist and incorporate some reflections related to our social and emotional world within what you are doing in your classes regularly. This is what I call the weaving in technique. That is, we start weaving into our content some reflection spaces, some information about emotions, using the materials we use every single day in our classes, in our English classes, to trigger those reflections. A third way of implementing this is creating off-schedule, I would say, programs, off-schedule activities such as workshops, such as activities with a physical education. That is something that I do a lot at different schools, creating like off-schedule moments where we can talk about the nature of emotions and all these things that I am sharing with you today. So this is very, very basically, because I could speak about this like for 2 hours, how we could implement these. So you can choose whatever format suits you best. Yeah. Okay. So now let's make a stop, because we already have been going through the first part. Yes. So it's a moment for us to stop, to check. Our brain needs different pauses for reflection. And in fact, this is one of the ideas I will share later with you today, So I want to walk my talk. I would like to stop now. And I would like you to share in the chat bubble, not in the question and answer, okay? In the chat bubble, please do go there and share with me 1 or 2 ideas that you have taken so far, okay? 1 or 2 ideas that resonate with you from what I've been developing so far. 1 or 2 ideas that you would like implementing with your students, okay? So share with me in the chat a couple of ideas from this first of what I've shared. And I will be reading you in the chat right now. So that we've got some time to reflect. I always call these in our sessions our pit stops, so that we can give our brain the time to consolidate some of the ideas you've been listening to. A kind of a summary if you want. So this is our first pit stop today. Okay. So Rebecca says, we are not our emotions, we are what we do with them. Okay, we will go far deep into this next Saturday. Kind of saying, I love the idea that all emotions are valid, but we have to know how to deal with them. Absolutely, that's why, remember, idea number 1 was all emotions are valid, but that does not mean that I am validating all types of behaviors, right? And of course, we need to have more strategies. This is what we will work with today and next Saturday, Karen, okay? On ideas and strategies on how to deal with them precisely. Okay, Rebecca says, I am comfortable with the first 2 ideas, but I wonder how much I make it clear to my students that sharing emotions is always an invitation. Okay, Rebecca, when I say that sharing emotions is always an invitation, I am referring to this kind of moments where we ask in front of all the students, how do you feel today? And that is okay, but it would be a little bit more appropriate, I would say, to ask, would you like to share how do you feel today? So that students have an option and a voice on their own individuality and whether they feel comfortable or not about sharing. And maybe they do feel comfortable sharing, but not speaking in front of everyone. So maybe they do want to share and they can do it through a drawing, or they can do it through writing, yes, some sentences on a piece of paper, for example. So that's what I mean when I say vision. Students can explore emotions through stories, poems, and this allows them to imagine themselves in situations without feeling that it is too personal. Absolutely, Daniel. And in fact, today, I will share with you a story that kind of models precisely this idea. How we can use the power of stories, the power of literature, the power of different, I don't know, different members or different participants in a video, in a song. So we can use many, many, many different triggers for this, not to make it so personal, right? At least at first. And then of course there will be students that will be absolutely happy to share. In most of the cases, kids, for example, have no problem in sharing, and in fact we've got to stop them, right? Because they are in many cases oversharing. So that is also part of teaching and learning about the world of emotions and the world of sharing. So thank you so much everyone for all your contributions and your ideas in the chat. Thank you for that. Let's move on now, because we have to talk about self-awareness. Remember that this is our second stop in our little journey today. Self-awareness. And for that, I will invite you to go now into Menti. So you could do this from your cell phone, from the computer, no problem. So I will invite you to go to menti.com, menti.com. Once you get there, it will ask you for a code number that is the one that you have on the screen right now. Once you get in the Menti room, I am waiting for you there with a question that is, what have been the most prevalent emotions as educators in times of pandemics? And you will have 4 options to share some of the most persistent emotions as educators in times of pandemics. Okay, so I will see you now online in Menti. I will give you some minutes for you to think about this. Remember that we think about how we feel, and that is also a way in which we learn how to feel. So this is a self-reflection exercise. Of course, I am doing this with as Menti. Does not give any name. So all the information you are sharing there is absolutely confidential because no names are mentioned. Just a cloud where we'll see different words, different emotions. And let me just check whether this is working. I want to see, yes, it is, because I already see 3 answers there. Okay, I will go back because maybe you need the code. Your emotions, Daniel, as a teacher during pandemic times. Your emotions as educators, because this is another rule. We have to start with ourselves. So my question for you is to focus on ourselves as educators. Could share 4 emotions there. So in a second, I will go online to share with you some of that information. Let's see. I guess you must be seeing right now what I see. That is this cloud of emotions. So the ones that you see that are bigger and at the center of our word cloud are the ones that are the most repeated among you. So we've got satisfaction, exasperation, exhaustion. Yeah. But we also have some other emotions like solidarity, grateful, excited, resourceful. Yes, and of course, we also have those difficult emotions. Stressed, dealing with uncertainty. This has been one of the most difficult, at least for me. Annoyed, fear, sadness, anger. Absolutely, okay? So in order for all of you to answer my question, yes?
Monica, can I come in a minute and say,
yep.
You need to share your screen again because we can't see the cloud and we want to see what...
Oh, okay. Let's do it again so that you could see the whole thing. Let's see now. Yep.
Any minute now.
Yeah.
I see a lion. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There we are. So my point is, in order for all of you to answer my welcoming question, we need to jump into our inner world. And this is the basics. This is the basis where we stand at in terms of self-awareness. Self-awareness is precisely about getting a jump into our inner world, recognizing our own emotions, being able to name them. Something that sounds easy, but it's quite a challenge, especially with students, because in many cases, they don't have the tools to name different emotions. And this is something we will work also on next Saturday. How can we expose students, offer them information about the whole range of emotions? Probably you've noticed that you ask students, how are you feeling today? And it's like, okay, fine. Bored, that's one of the typical answers. Students here in Argentina now, bored is like the most typical answer. What does that mean? What does boredom mean? Is it 100% boredom? Or are you saying bored just because maybe you don't have so many names to name other emotions? We will talk about an interesting concept that is diversity next Saturday. That is how we help our students and ourselves become aware of our whole range of emotions. So again, coming back to this question of self-awareness, precisely, self-awareness is about this. Helping students or teachers get in touch with their emotional states of mind. It has to do, as I said before, with identifying emotions, with recognizing our strengths, with recognizing our weaknesses as opportunities for development. And it has to do most of all with our own inner resources, recognizing our own inner resources. So it is really a moment to stop, to breathe, and to go inside. Remember that when we talk about social and emotional development, we talk about first intrapersonal skills, self-awareness and self-regulation. That is going to be next Saturday. And then we move into the social areas. Social awareness, relationship building. That is what is going to happen in our last session, okay? So we will go through all of them. This is what self-awareness is about. Let me share with you an activity that we can use with students. And this could be something that you can do, let me say, kind of in a face-to-face environment, or you can also do it when you are, for example, online. And I will share how to do it, for example, in a Zoom session, because I'm not sure whether you will go back 100% face-to-face, or if you will go back to classes on a blended mode, okay? But this is the activity I am about to share with you is precisely about self-awareness, and it's like a different type of exercise from the one that we've just done online, okay? This is called 4 corners. Probably you already know the activity because we teachers use the 4 corners a lot in different types of activities and in different types of sharing. Now we will use it for emotions, okay? So we have students, so we can invite them to choose one of these 4 corners. How are you feeling? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling, corner number 2, grateful? Are you feeling worried? Corner number 2. Are you feeling powerful? Corner number 4. So students might go into each of these corners, and then of course we give them some guiding questions to dig deeper into these emotions, not necessarily speaking about themselves, but for example, what is anxiousness? How do we feel it in our body? In which moments have we felt this way? So we give opportunities in each of the 4 corners of our room to go deeper into these emotions. Of course, you can choose any emotions you want. Probably you've noticed that I have chosen 2 essential, 2 powerful feelings, emotions, and 2 others that are difficult to deal with. And probably you have also noticed that I am not using the basic emotions. I'm not using sad, happy, okay? I am moving into some names and some emotions that maybe are not the traditional names we use to name different emotions. This is precisely because I want to take the opportunity for our students to get to know a more expanded version of our range of emotions. So in each corner, our students might discuss a little bit about this. And if you feel like it, if you've got the time, you might just close this activity with a circle of reflection that I will give you some instructions about that in a second. Okay, so this is another thing we could do. If you are online, you can create, for example, in Zoom, breakout rooms. So you might create 4 breakout rooms and assign your students to breakout room number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4, according to their choice. Okay, so this is another activity, and you will be able to enrich it in 100 ways, of course. Yeah, so one activity that you can take to do with your students. Another thing, now that you will be getting back to the classroom, welcoming rituals. That is so important. Welcoming rituals have different characteristics, but I would like to share with you some ideas about number 1 and number 2, because number 3 we did it together a minute ago. Morning circles. Morning circles are something that is really very, very nice to do, and they have to do with using these moments at the very beginning of the class. Morning circles have to be very clear in what your objective is and the time that you allocate for this. Okay, in general, they are very short. I would say then between 5 to maximum probably 10 minutes, okay, no more than that. And in the morning circles, you've got different moments. So take a note, because I will share with you these different questions, yes, that we could use, and these different triggers that we could use for these welcoming rituals, in this case, the morning circle. So the morning circle has different steps. The first steps is welcoming your students to the morning circle. Step number 2, triggering questions. For example, what went well yesterday? You have to be very selective about the type of questions you will choose. So what went well yesterday? What is on your mind? How does it feel to get back to school? So be careful about your pick, your choice of powerful questions to use at this moment, because this will give you a lot of very interesting and very, very fruitful information for your teaching, okay? The third step is a moment to share good news, bad news. And moment number 4 is word of the day. So you can use one word that maybe will connect to the contents that you will develop that day in English. Maybe it is a word related to vocabulary, but also try to focus on meaningful words, such as solidarity, such as curiosity, such as value. When do I feel valued, for example? Okay, so these are the 4 steps for the morning circle. Okay, the morning circle starts with a welcoming. The point number 2 is a powerful question you want to use. Number 3, good news, bad news. And number 4, word of the day. Very, very briefly, but that will give you a lot of information on what is going on with the group, especially now that we will be coming back to face, and there will surely be a lot of emotions to deal with, right? Number 2 is a tribe welcome. Why don't asking our students how would they like to welcome their peers? Okay, this is a tribe welcome. So they might come up with different ideas on each of them welcoming the rest of their friends each day. You may take turns so that it's not you that trigger the welcome rituals, but it's sometimes up to them to come up with ideas on how to make this ritual a welcoming ritual, so that they get into class starting from a self-awareness mood, precisely. Because probably you've noticed that there is a lot of self-awareness going on in the morning circle or tribe welcome, and in the 4 corners that I have already shared with you. So something very interesting that I learned, and this was a month ago, I participated in a very intensive and interesting course by very young Imodino Young. She's one of the most recognized brain scientist, teacher, and specialist on emotions nowadays in the educational world. And she mentioned this concept of the seesaw, which I want to share with you because it's really very interesting in terms of the whole process of teaching and learning. So as you can see, in the seesaw, we've got at one extreme cognition, at the other one emotion. They are part of the same thing, as I mentioned earlier today. But the seesaw is imbalanced because of the salience network, this base that is in the middle of the seesaw, this triangle, this wooden triangle that you see at the middle. And this is what is in our brains called the salience network. This is what keeps the balance between cognition and emotion in a learning process. Why? Because the salience network is what tells me precisely what is salient, what is relevant about what the other person is trying to teach me. How many times did you ask your teachers as students? Try to remember yourselves as students. How many times did you ask your teachers, why should I learn this? What's the point of learning this? How am I going to apply this in life? This is your salience network in action. The salience network is what tells our students, this is interesting. Why something is interesting? Because it is relevant for their reality, for their story of the world, for their vision of how they understand the world. So if we want to teach them English, we have to activate the salience network. We have to activate why whatever we are trying to teach is relevant for them, not for us, because we do understand that understanding and being able to deploy narrative tenses is something that will help you talk about your story of life, for example. Do they know this? In many cases, we teachers, I think, fall short, maybe, in terms of sharing why whatever we are trying to teach could be relevant. And of course, activating their salience network, because we learn for life something that we consider is relevant. If we don't see the meaning, we just learn for passing tests. Yeah? And we just learn because we know that there will be a midterm test or end of the year test, and we just have to pass it. But if we really talk about lifelong learning and these things that we have learned that we will remember for life, it's because the salience network has been activated. Emotion is key for this, because we pay attention to things that are relevant because there is an emotion behind that. And we focus and concentrate and activate our critical thinking, our problem solving, and so on, only through our cognition. So can you see the connection? Can you see the movements of the seesaw balanced by the salience network? So let's think together as educators about how we can activate this. How can we make our teaching meaningful, salient for our students? Yeah. So this is a concept that I wanted to share with you by Mary Modino Young. And now, 3 more ideas. Remember that we talked about number 1, 2, and 3. Rebecca.
Monica, we don't have time. Yeah. We've run out of time. 3 more for next week. It's so exciting.
I know.
Come back.
3 more for next week.
Brilliant.
That would be great.
Okay.
Shall we go into questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you from Nefti Fortis. It's very relevant to what you were talking about the 4 corners of the classroom. Nefti says, how could we deal with emotions now if our students cannot touch each other? How could we develop social skills when they barely socialize in a classroom setting?
This is a great question, and it's going to be one and only one of the many challenges we'll be facing when we get back to school. I think that it's extremely important for our students, and we have to make, first of all, my first part of the answer is we have to make this very explicit. Our classrooms are natural, safe environments for learning and development. We need to make them even safer, not only in terms, of course, of taking care of our health and all the protocols that we will have to be deploying, but also making it safe environments, content environments for our students to be able to express their fears, to talk about these fears, to know that, and this is a very important concept I've been dealing with through all pandemics, physical distancing is not emotional distancing. We can create strategies as teachers that may help our students connect even when they have to keep their distance, even when we have to be wearing our masks. We need to talk about this. We need to talk to our students about the importance of our connection, that we know that naturally goes a lot through our physical interaction. And that part is a little bit off at this moment, but it is not 100% off. We can connect through our words, we can connect through our eyes, we can connect through the ways we write ideas, the activities that we deploy for them. But it is extremely relevant to talk about this, to use these activities I'm sharing with you to provide this sense of safety for them, because we don't feel safe. We have been threatened, and our health has been threatened for such a long period of time that fear is our natural reaction nowadays. So we have to talk to our students about the importance of these spaces we create, about the importance of getting in touch with their emotions, that it is okay that they feel fear. We all feel it. But it is also as important for us to know that we can work on that together as a community of learning in your classes.
Thank you very much, Monica. That's a very positive note to finish our first session. Very interesting. We're going to be putting this recording on our webpage so that people can come and visit it again, or see it for the first time so that they're prepared for next week. Same time, same place. Thank you.
Same time, same place. And I have just shared, Rebecca, my email address. I have some extra ideas to share with you about coming back to classes and and the social and emotional learning protocols that we can also propose in our institutions, in our schools. So if you're interested, you just send me an email and I will be happy to share some tools for that. I also developed an interesting survey for coming back to classes, and I will be also happy to share if you are interested, okay? So just send me an email and I will be sharing, and I guess we'll be seeing each other next Saturday, yes?
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Have a good week. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Rebecca. Bye.